junket, the segmentation is mainly focused on the human network. And just now we mentioned the customer advocacy, and this is a very important part because people will tell you the experience, how fascinating it is. You go there and enjoy the game. And all in all, this is the way how we train our staff, that we treat the customer really well, and understand them, understand what they want, and so that we design the kind of VIP services that will cater to their needs. And for junket, one point is that we are more flexible, and because we don't have so many segments, because we don't own a huge database as Kevin does, and therefore the work is more simple because we have only a few parameters. As Wayne said, we have 4 segments, and then we divide the group, and then we know what to offer them. In case some VVIP, then they have very specific requirements. We can calculate how much value we can spend. We can entertain to the customer requests very smoothly. I think this is one of the characteristics that Junkets does provide the VIP service very differently.
Any questions from the audience? Yes.
Are there any particular metropolitan areas, whether in China or Asia broadly, that are the focus for trying to grow new visitation to Macau or to your properties?
Yeah, well, when you say there's new areas, the market generally is driven again by the old, 80-20 or 70-30, or depending on what sort of factor you want to put in there. A large amount of our volume still comes from the southern part of China in terms of Guangdong, and you see that, and it's still growing at a pace, by the way, right? So there's still, let's call it the core markets, obviously in the context of day visitation and day trippers, and not all day trippers are the people who follow the flags, by the way, through the property, right? I'm not talking about that day visitation. I'm talking about day players. So day play from Hong Kong and Guangdong is still on the rise. If we start to think about, obviously, further outgoing areas, and including, obviously, in the context of Beijing, Shanghai, and obviously up the east coast in particular of China, they've been very good source markets. There are other provinces that are coming on stream, and coming on stream means probably more about access through rail or infrastructure generally, or flights directly into Macau. When flights open up directly into Macau, you start to identify that particular location is a fairly rich area, whether that's mass or premium mass, and I'm sure it's the same in the context of junkets. So really, you could argue the market to a large degree is dependent on the routes that you can see now being established into Macau direct in terms of direct access. And if you look at the list of new flights that are coming into Macau now, and there are a number of them, they start to become focused areas for advertisement or advertising generally or communications generally, which is actually more targeted rather than mass.
Anybody else in the audience have a question?
Thank you. What impact is Xi Jinping's various campaigns, his austerity campaign and other crackdowns, having on customers coming across the border, particularly for the junkets, but also for the operators themselves?
Is it about the cash you mentioned, is it?
Well, there have been a series of campaigns in China to crack down on various things. There's been talk about union pay. There have been efforts to crack down on money laundering. There's a massive campaign to clamp down on corruption. I'm not suggesting that you're associated with these, but I'm asking you, is there any impact from that on your business?
Believe it or not, actually, no impact at all. Because for junket operators, people bring in cash to play. But in our previous record from past year and this year, actually, the numbers is quite stable. Never jumped so high and never dropped so low. It's very stable, and I think the trend is steady growing too, in our way, for the players coming to play. So, and maybe on this part, maybe just add some more information for you guys. A lot of people have very bad conceptions about union pay and things like that. But in Macau, when you go to other places and casinos, people come in paying cash. So this is, I don't think it will affect casino business in ways in Macau.
But can I just, I mean, some of that cash is got because someone goes to a shop, they buy a watch for $50,000 with a Union Pay card, they bring the watch back 5 minutes later and they get $49,000. That's where they get the cash from, right?
I think with this issue, I really believe Macau regulations and regulators are very strong control over all the shops and things. I think a lot of people talks about that, but when you go to a shop, people really spend that money to buy a watch.
Anybody else have any questions? I have one, I'm sorry, Nita, go. I have one final question. You know, there's an often used term in marketing, and that is you market to market segments. Other than gaming volume, what are the various segments, Kevin, that, and to Anita and Wayne, what are the various segments that you look at, and how do you market to various market segments?
Yeah, good one. I won't go into all of the segments because, as everybody or some people may appreciate in this room, there's a huge number of segments and sub-segments in any business and the way that it looks at its business. I think we're starting to get a better idea of, firstly, the value by gaming, but also the value by non-gaming. And it's far easier to do that through obviously a rated customer, even if they're rated in the context of casino, because we now got point-of-sale systems and systems generally in place which actually tracks all of their spend across the resort. Plus you do continuous forms of research with your existing customers as well as obviously those customers that you'd like to bring into the property in terms of understanding what their value drivers are and what their preference drivers are. There is an increasing level of interest on, let's call it non-gaming related activity. There's always been the interest related to retail, always been the interest related to retail. And it's interesting that you make the comment about retail, because I picked up the point that you're making about the measures by the authority in China has certainly impacted on, let's call it the luxury retail market in China.